Welcome students, Standard 12th, Chapter 8, Classes and Objects in Java. Very interesting chapter. Almost it clears all the basics of Java programming in this chapter. Whatever you studied, the basic of Java object-oriented concept you studied in Chapter 6, here all those concepts are practically shown. Before beginning with the chapter, let us see a simple, very simple program so that you will understand the concept of programming in Java. As you know, the very first line is a comment line because it begins with double slash. So it's a comment line and it says actually it should be compute simple interest. This is a program to calculate simple interest. We are creating one class, that is interest class, and we are making that class public. So public class interest. Opening curly bracket is the definition starting with for interest class. Then the compulsory method, and that is public static void main string square bracket args. You might find that square bracket in somewhere in any other textbook or some other program after args. Both are valid. Either you put square bracket before args or you can put square bracket after args. Both is fine. Again, the next line is a comment line slash star and star slash. That's it. Again, comment line, and we are giving comment that we are now declaring variables. And now we have declared 5 variables: principal, rate, duration, maturity, and interest. And all these 5 variables are of type double. Then next is computation. We are assigning values to all these variables which we have created. So principal amount, we are making 17,000. Rate of interest is 7.5. Duration is 3. And now we are calculating interest. So as you know, the formula of simple interest is principal amount multiplied by duration multiplied by rate of interest and whole divided by 100. So that is, we computed interest. Now maturity amount would be principal amount plus interest. And then finally we are displaying the result. And you know that in Java, to display something on screen, we have system.out.println, and make sure the S of system is capital. So system.out.println, whatever is within inverted comma, you know that it will be printed as it is on screen. So principal amount and colon, that will be printed as it is. Then principal, after plus sign principal, there it will print the value of the variable principal. So whatever is the value of principal variable, that is 17,000, that will be printed. And then again rs full stop, that is a rupees and full stop. So that will be printed as it is. So finally it will print principal amount 17,000 rupees. So it will print duration 3 years, interest rate 7.5 and percentage sign, and then whatever interest it has calculated and whatever maturity amount it has calculated. Then it is end of main method, and then finally it is end of class interest. Those 2 curly brackets which we started in the beginning of the program are getting over here. So now let us understand what is classes in Java. A class is a template for multiple objects with similar features. So we create a class in order to create multiple objects, more than one objects or as many objects we want. But only thing is those objects will be of the same class. So all those objects will be same as they are defined in the class. So class is a template. When we want to create so many objects, first what we need to do is we need to create a class. Class embody all the features of a particular set of objects. So whatever features are there in all those objects, that is actually written in class. So object reflects everything what is written in the class. Every class in Java is made up of 2 components. There are 2 things in every class of Java. One is attributes and another is behaviors. Attribute, that is variables, as you saw here, we defined principal, rate, duration, maturity, interest, they are called attributes. And behavior, that is method, which we have not defined in this program any, but as you can see, there is a ready-made method system.out.println. So that is what we defined here. You can say this main is a method. So main method you can say. So main method we have defined here, and then attributes are principal, rate, duration, and so on. In other words, a class contains both data and program code. Data which is referring to the attributes, that is variables, and program code referring to the methods or functions defined in the program. So in previous programming, that is in C, there was no concept of class. In C programming, attributes and behavior were written as we write in normal program. They were not contained within a class. So there was no concept of class. Whereas in Java, there is a concept of class. And whenever you want to write any attributes or behavior, that is variable or method, that must be enclosed within a class. Attributes are defined by variables in class, and behaviors are defined by methods in a class. Methods are used to access or modify attributes. So what is the use of creating method? So we create methods in order to modify the values of the attributes. We have a variable, let's say we have a variable interest, and to change that value of that variable interest, we write some methods, some functions which will modify the values of attributes. A class is a data type again. We have primitive data types, but when we create one class, that class also can be used as a data type of our own. So similar to built-in data type such as integer, boolean, and etc., class is also the class which we define in our program are also considered or can be used as a data type. So a class name can be used to specify the type of a variable in a declaration statement. As we write double rate, similarly we can even write a name of a class and then followed by variable name. We will see this thing in further in this chapter. The type of a formal parameter or the written type of a function. So a class can be used as a variable in declaration statement, or it can also be used as a formal parameters. Formal parameters are the parameters written after the method or function within bracket. And the return type, as you can see here, this is return type, public, static, void, main, that is void, that is a return type. So public or static or void, especially void is the return type. But we'll see in next program exactly the return type. And what you write within the bracket, that is called formal parameters. So it can be used, the class which we define can be used to specify formal parameter, and it also can be used to specify return type of a function. Now let us see how we can create object from a class. So creating an object from a class requires 3 steps. The first step is declaration. So a variable, whatever variable name you want to take, a variable name is used to declare a class, object of a class. So a variable name of type class is declared with syntax class name followed by variable name, and that variable name can be anything. For example, suppose we have a room class and I want to declare object R1 of room class, then I should write room R1. But remember, declaring variable does not create object. When you write room R1, compiler only gets a notification that user or this program wants to create an object R1 of type room, but it is still not created in the memory. Second step, instantiation. Instantiation is the step where we use the keyword new to create object by allocating memory. So actual object is created when we use new keyword for instantiation. So that is instantiation, where we write R1 is equal to new room. That is called instantiation. And the third is initialization. A constructor is called to initialize the newly created object. But what is constructor is still not, we have not studied it. So third point, you just leave it. We will be discussing about constructor also in the chapter. So right now you see only two things, declaration and instantiation, and we will see practically now. Creating object, the other part. In object-oriented programming, creating an object is also called object instantiation, because when we instantiate it, then only object is being created and being stored in the memory. Declaring a variable does not create an object, as I said. So declaring a variable, that means writing room R1. You consider, as we discussed, see, room is a data type, like as we write a double rate. Similarly, here it is room R1. But only thing is, before writing room R1, there has to be room class created by user. The actual object is created when new keyword is used. For example, writing room R1 is equal to new room. When you write this statement, then object is created in the memory. That object name is R1 and the object type is room. Every object has its own set of data. Every object will have different set of data. It's something like if I distribute a form to 50 students in class, and then if I ask 50 students to fill that form, then every form will have their own set of data. Similarly, every object will have its own set of data. When an object is created, a special method called constructor is executed to perform initialization of the attributes coming in that object. એ ઓબ્જેક્ટમાં જેટલા attributes variables બનાવેલા હોય એનું initialization કરવા માટે there is something called constructor which is used, but still again we will be discussing about constructor in detail afterward. When objects are not more needed in the program, the memory is claimed back to be reused, and that procedure is known as garbage collector. For that, we as a user, we don't need to do anything. Whenever any object is now not more needed in the program, compiler itself, the Java compiler itself removes that object from the memory, and that process is called garbage collector. Now let us see one proper program where there is some different methods and attributes and variable. This program can be taken further in the entire chapter to understand different topics of the chapter 8. First line is comment line, classroom. That means we are creating a class with the name room. So classroom. Opening curly bracket, that is the definition of the room class starts. We are creating 4 variables: length, width, height, and n windows. Length, width, and height are of type float, so it can store number with decimal point, and n windows is byte type, so it can store only whole numbers without decimal point, and that also limited only from -128 to +127, not a number bigger than that or smaller than that. Because we are going to store in that variable, we are going to store number of windows in a room. So you know that there are no room in this on this planet where there are more than 127 windows. So for us, byte is enough. Now, so these 4 are called attributes of the class. Now we are creating methods, behavior. So first behavior or first method is void set attribute. Now void indicates that this set attribute method does not return any value. When this method is executed, nothing is being returned to the program. Into bracket float L, float W, float H, and byte N. These are called formal arguments. These are called formal arguments. And now the definition of set attribute method. So what we are doing in set attribute method is nothing. We are just assigning L to length, W to width, H to height, and N to N windows. We are just assigning values. Then that's the end of the set attribute method. Second method, we are creating double area. Now as you see here, the return type is double. it is now not void. The return type is double, means when area method is executed, it will return some value and that value will be of type double. But here another change is there is no formal parameters. There are no parameters written in area method. So while calling area method from your program, you don't need to send any value. It doesn't accept any value, whereas set attribute accepts 4 values. Okay, what we are doing in area method, there is only one line written in area method. Rest are comments. We are returning length multiplied by width. So we are multiplying length and width and we are returning that value from wherever the area method is called. Third method is void display. The method is void. That is the method return type. So void is its return type, means display method is again not returning anything back. And bracket is also empty. That means display method there are no formal parameters. So it doesn't require any parameters also to get executed. And then there are 4 print statement: system.out.println length. So whatever is within inverted comma, it will be printed as it is. Whatever is outside inverted comma, it will print its value. And plus sign is called concatenate operator. It is used to join string with variable. String and variable ne સાથે join કરે છે. \n indicates new line. So first it will print enter and then it will print length and all this thing. So \n is called, it is for new line character. It is called new line character. So it will print length, width, height, its value, and finally fourth line it will print number of windows and n windows. And that's the end of display method. And again another closing curly bracket, that is the end of room class. So this is the structure of room class which we have created. And now we will create object from this room class. Let us see the program continues. Now we are creating a class with the name class room demo. The name of the class is room demo. And that class contains main method like public static void string args. Here if you can see, the square brackets are after args. You may put it before args or you may keep it after args. Both are same. First line is comment line. Then we say room R1. So we are just declaring variable R1. Room R1 is just declaration. Then we say R1 is equal to new room. That is called instantiation. Means we are now creating object using the keyword new. So now R1 object is created in the memory and it will occupy certain space in the memory. We can combine these two steps together and we create another object R2, but here we are combining both the steps. And what we are writing is directly room R2 is equal to new room. So it will create two objects R1 and R2, and it just shows you two different methods. One is where you write declaration separately and instantiation separately, and the second method where R2 object is created, we have combined declaration and instantiation together. Now again comment line display two room objects with initial default value. So now let us see how we can display it. So you know that we have already written display method. So we say r1.display, r2.display. Now this is very interesting for you to understand. See, object r1 and object r2 both are having display method. Then if I just simply write display, program or rather compiler gets confused which display method I want to use. So I should specifically say that r1.display means the display method which is there in the object r1. r2.display means the display method which is written in object r2. It is something like there are two Yash in the same class, and if I just say Yash come here, then both the Yash will get confused, okay, whom I am calling. So I should either specifically say that the Yash who is sitting in the last bench, please come here, or the Yash whose surname is Mehta, please come here, or something unique I need to say. Similarly here, if I want to execute the display method of particular object, then I should specify that object name followed by the method. So we are displaying both the method. Now we are assigning values to the object. So we use set attribute method of R1 and R2. Remember, it is defined here. The first method is set attribute. Just now we used display method to display everything. Because we just created all these variable objects R1 and R2 and all the new variables are created in that. So initially this will have blank value, zero value rather. So if I show you the output also simultaneously, you can see that length is 0.0, width is 0.0, height is 0.0 and number of windows is 0. Here it is not 0.0 because the number of windows, the variable which we have taken n windows, the data type is byte. So there is no decimal point. Same for are two objects. So both the objects values are 0 initially. Now what we are doing is we are using R1 dot set attribute. Now as you know, set attribute here, as you know, set attribute method requires 4 parameters. 4 parameters. So we should write 4 values in the bracket. So first we are writing 18, that will be length, 12.5, that will be width, 10, that would be height, and 2, that is number of windows. But there are three things to understand. The first thing is why 12.5f? So the reason is if you write only 12.5, compiler considers it as double variable. The value will be considered as double data type. So in order to specify that 12.5 is a float data, we should write 12.5 capital F or 12.5 small f. I hope you understood why we need to do it, because here we declared width as float. Suppose here if you would have declared width as double, this W, width as double, then it is fine if you write only 12.5. But since it is declared as float, so writing only 12.5, so by default floating point number, the number with decimal point is considered as double. So in order to say that this is not double but this is rather floating point value, a float value, we should say 12.5 f. 18 માં એવું કહેવાની જરૂર નથી. There is no need of for 10 because they are integer values. So by default they are integer. So they will be stored in float. See, few things in big bag can be accommodated, but big things in small bag cannot be accommodated. So 18 is integer, which is going to be stored in float. So that is fine because float is a big bag compared to integer. But only 12.5, that is a double, which is a bigger bag than float. So that will not go inside float. So we need to exclusively say that 12.5 is a float value. Similarly, byte 2, because when you say only 2, it is considered as integer. So you know that we have declared n as byte, and in order to convert 2 into byte, we need to explicitly write byte into bracket so that that value 2 will be considered as byte and not as an integer. Same way for R2.set attribute 14, 11, 10 and byte 1. So if you observe here, here we have not written 11f because 11 is integer number which is going to be stored in float, which is fine. But if it was 11.0, then we should have written f in order to say that this is a float value. Then next again we are displaying R1 and R2. So as you see the output, now when you display second time R1 and R2, it displays the value like length 18.0, width 12.5, height 10.0 and number of windows 2. Similarly length 14.0, width 11.0, height 10.0 and number of windows 1. So that is how it displays. And finally we want to display area of both the room. So for that we say system.out.println, that we want to print it here, \n, that is enter key, area of room with length will be printed as it is because it is written within inverted comma, and there is a blank space also afterward. Then plus sign, that is concatenate operator, r1 dot length, which will print the length of r1 object r1, plus width, which is within inverted comma, so will be printed as it is. Then r1 dot width, which will print the width of the r1 object, and is, which is again within inverted comma, will be printed as it is. And then r1 dot area method. So here we are calling area method, and as you know, area method is doing simple one thing. It is multiplying length width here, and it returns that multiplication where it returns from wherever it is called. So it is called from here. Here it will return the multiplication of length and width, and same for r2 object. So ultimately the output will be like this: area of room with length 18.0, width 12.5 is 225.0. Area of room with length 14.0, width 11.0 is 154.0. Exit code 0 is very interesting to observe. If you are trying this in your computer, then remember, when you compile a program, Java program, if it gives you exit code 0, that means your program is compiled successfully without any error. And if you get any non-zero value, means there is some error. So this is how we created room class. As you can see here, this first we created room class here, and then we created two variables r1 and r2 of type room. But here they are called object because they are created from class. So they are called object, whereas length, width, height, they are called variables, and r1 and r2 called object. Otherwise they are same only. But because r1 and r2 are created from class, so they are called object. So this is what the output, and this is again for you to understand that how r1 and r2 are created. So r1, it is created from class room, so it is object of class room, and it has all these four values stored in it. Similarly r2, which is again created from class room, and it has these four values. So as you can see, when you create multiple objects from same class, both the class will have same format, same data, same thing, everything will be same, only the values will be different. It is something like I distribute two form to two students, let's say R1 and R2, two form, where instead of length, width, height and end windows, I say first name, middle name, last name, birth date. First name, middle name, last name, birth date. Then when I give it to two different students, what I will get is these values will be different for both the students. The first name will be different, middle name will be different, last name will be different, birth date will be different, or it may be some values might be same, but they are totally two separate objects. So this is how we create objects. Once again, remember, a class is a template. A class itself is doing nothing, but it is just a blueprint from which we create objects. So it's something like original document from where we get the photocopies, Xerox copies. So that is what class and object. One more example to understand the relationship between class and object is, if I have a proper planning of a bungalow on paper, architect they made a plan of a bungalow on paper. So you know that from that a plan, I can construct multiple bungalows. So from one bungalow's plan, I can construct as many bungalows I want to construct. But you know that all those bungalows will be of same type. Similarly, from room class, we created two objects, R1 and R2. But you know that both are same. Only they differ in their values. They differ only in their values. Similarly, if I create 10 bungalows from one plan, all those 10 bungalows will be same, but they will be only differing in their owner of the bungalow, who is staying there, how they are decorating their bungalows, and that will be different. Otherwise they are same. So that is the relationship between class and object.